What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to TTP Sports, and it feels like we are getting closer and closer towards the National Hockey League season to finally start, finally settle on a date. And with this breaking news right here from the Philadelphia Flyers, it feels like we're getting closer and closer towards that announcement. We'll get into the NHL announcement. Well, it hasn't really been announced yet by the National Hockey League. It's been rumored at this point by reporters, so we'll get into that a little bit later. But from the Philadelphia Flyers organization, they just re-signed restricted free agent defenseman Phil Myers to a 3-year contract worth $2.55 million annually per season. This is a fantastic contract by Chuck Fletcher and the Philadelphia Flyers, re-signing Phil Myers, who is just coming off of his entry-level contract, and he was holding out for a little bit. I wouldn't say it was mainly because of him. I feel like the holdout was basically just because of the unknownness of when the NHL season was going to start, because you saw a lot of restricted free agents just not being signed at this point. People like Matthew Barzal of the New York Islanders, he still has not re-signed yet. I think Mikhail Sergachev of the Tampa Bay Lightning, I think he resigned a couple of weeks ago to around like $4 million annually. So Phil Myers really didn't have much to argue with, which I really didn't expect him to argue with anything, and he got himself a nice deal right here locked up. It's really similar to Travis Sanheim's contract with his 2-year, I think $3 million contract right there. But they link him up, they get him for 3 years. Phil Myers really stepped up into a new role, honestly, in this first full season in the National Hockey League, being paired mostly with Travis Sanheim throughout the entire season, and those two developed some kind of chemistry together. There were some shaky moments, definitely. That comes when you have two very young defensemen on the blue line playing top 4 minutes on your team, but they found some chemistry, and even in the playoffs as well, especially in that first round against the Montreal Canadiens, and then when Phil Myers scored that overtime winner in Game 2 against the New York Islanders. Phil Myers, he's an up-and-coming defenseman. He's one of those Ron Hextall signings, and Phil Myers wasn't drafted. He was one of those free agent signings after the draft by Ron Hextall, and he's making a big impact on this team right now. And the question is going to be, is Phil Myers going to be playing on the role with Travis Sanheim in that top 4? Or is he going to be one of the defensemen that slides up into the top 2 with Ivan Provorov? Because losing Matt Niskanen in the offseason, that was a huge blow to this defensive blue core. Because Matt Niskanen, he was a major reason that Ivan Provorov had a good season. He really solidified that top 4 role playing with Provorov. And he made Provorov bounce back from a really down season a couple of years ago. And losing Matt Niskanen to retirement, that is a huge blow to that defensive core. And the question is going to be, who is going to be playing on that top 2 with Ivan Provorov? Is it going to be Phil Myers? Will Travis Sanheim slot in there? Will the newly signed Eric Gustafsson? I really don't expect that to happen. And really the only obvious choice to me would be a Phil Myers, just so they can get that left-handed, right-handed defenseman on a pairing on the top line. And it was kind of expected that Phil Myers would eventually move up into that top 2 role with Ivan Provorov at some point in his career. So maybe this is a point where the young guys really got to step up. They lost a key piece in the offseason. This is when guys like Travis Sanheim, Phil Myers, they have to step up and take a new role with this team. Ivan Provorov, he is the top defender on this team. He is one of the best defenders in the National Hockey League, and he is still very young in his young 20s. So this is a very young blue line. And this blue line is only going to get better. Yes, the loss of Matt Niskanen is very tough, but this is a point where the young guys have to step up on that blue line. You got Provorov, you got Phil Myers, you got Travis Sanheim, you got the newly signed Eric Gustafsson, got Robert Haig, Justin Braun, who are most likely going to be the 2 guys playing the bottom minutes. Shane Gostisbehere, he's still a question mark at this point. Is he going to get some type of role with this team? Is he ever going to get traded? That's really the question mark that's going to be hovering around Ghost's head for basically the rest of his tenure with the Philadelphia Flyers. So that's going to be the question mark right there. And like your 6th, 7th type of defenseman, maybe that becomes a guy like a Mark Friedman who comes up from the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. So there are some question marks, but I do think that Phil Myers can find himself on that top pairing with Ivan Provorov. Last season, he got, I think, at least 16 points in every game that he had played, and he got 4 points playing in the playoffs. 3 of them were goals. He got a couple of them in the round robin series, and he got some against the New York Islanders, especially that one in overtime. So Phil Myers, that was a great signing. 3 years, $2.55 million annually, and a good signing by the Flyers. And like I said, I feel like this signing means that we're getting closer and closer towards the NHL and the NHLPA agreeing on a start date for the National Hockey League. And it was reported today that one of the NHL reporters, they've heard from their inside sources from the NHLPA that they're focusing on a start date, which would be January 13th. And I think that's a Wednesday in the middle of January. And the tentatives would be that each teams would get a 10-day training camp before that, and there would be no exhibition games. So that'll be really good. I think the whole situation with the escrow, the deferral, I think they're starting to get closer and closer to settling towards that, and it's not becoming as a big issue as it once was during the stretch of the fall after the playoffs, when basically the escrow and the deferral and the owners wanting more money, that was the major problem right there. And it feels like they're starting to get closer and closer towards an agreement. And who knows? Maybe we'll find something. Gary Bettman maybe announcing something later this week on the actual start date of the National Hockey League, because I need hockey back. We just need sports back. We're getting the Sixers back in a couple weeks. We're getting basketball back in general, and that's going to be very fun to watch. Can't stand football right now because it sucks. So getting the NBA back, getting the NHL back, that's going to be some really exciting moments right there. And it's going to be interesting, too, what to decide on with the NHL season, because there have been talks about some teams wanting some outdoor games to play in just so they can have that chance to have some fans come in and watch some games, try to get that revenue in there. And are there going to be any situations with bubbles again? And the whole Canadian division, how the divisions are going to be realigned just because of this whole situation, because the Canadian border is still closed due to the whole pandemic situation. So it's going to be a interesting development right here with the National Hockey League. Hopefully we find something out in the next few days, maybe in the next few weeks or so, because we're getting closer and closer towards that January date. And they're going to have to announce something probably within the next few days, maybe the next week or so, to settle things down, and so teams can get prepared, because there are some players from each team that are coming into the States, that are coming into Canada to prepare to get some practice in. I think Provorov is still practicing in the skate zone in Voorhees. I think a couple of other Flyers are also practicing as well, so that's very nice to see right there. So I I was going to say Evan Provorov for a second. Phil Myers signed to that great deal. Really good contract right there by Chuck Fletcher. And I think the cap space for the Flyers right now, they were at like 4.9 million something before this. And I think right now they'll probably be around the 2.5 to 2.3 range in the cap space. So yeah, they're getting really close to the cap, which is a little concerning, but that does leave them a little tiny bit of room to work with. They're not like some of the other teams in the league that are really tight on the cap, like the Vegas Golden Knights, like the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're not in that range yet. Hopefully they don't get to that range yet. And I feel like once we get to that actual start date announcement, I feel like that's when we're going to see trades happening, free agent signings happening, because there's still a ton of free agents that are out there. Mike Hoffman's still out there, Anthony Duclair's still out there, Anthony Siu's still out there. There are a ton of guys that are still unsigned. So I think once we finally get a date of the NHL start, I think that's when players are going to start signing again. I think that's when we're going to be seeing some trades happening between certain teams, because there's been a little bit of a pause just to settle out, because it was basically just unknown at this point. That's probably why we didn't see any moves really going on. So we'll probably get some moves happening when the start date's happening. So it's going to be really exciting. It's going to be really exciting to see. So I want to hear your thoughts on the contract signed by Phil Myers. What are your thoughts on that, on Chuck Fletcher's really good signing right there? I want to hear your thoughts on the NHL season. What do you think it's going to happen? Do you think it's going to start on the 13th? And when do you expect the announcement to happen? So I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section below, so don't forget to leave that. Don't forget to drop a like. Don't forget to look at the Painted Lines, which I am a part of. I'll leave their links in the description as well. Same thing with the Florida Podcast merch. I have that link in the description as well to the TeePublic site that the Florida Podcast has, so don't forget to check that out. So don't forget to leave a comment. Don't forget to drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.